Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgie Calvin-Smith. Tonight, on the eve of the country's presidential and parliamentary polls, security has been beefed up in Uganda's capital. We hear from our correspondent about those in the running to topple President Museveni from 3 decades in power. Also, having lost everything in a series of tidal waves, we speak to the families of a Ghanaian coastal community who say that authorities have abandoned them to the elements. And we head onto the catwalk with an Ethiopian supermodel who's using her experience on the runways of the world to promote local creative talent and back Ethiopian events trying to encourage local fashion designers. Well, Ugandans are gearing up for Thursday's presidential poll. 7 candidates are challenging President Yoweri Museveni's 30-year head start on holding office. Parliamentary polls will also be happening, and police are out in force in Kampala on the eve of voting day. Our Duncan Woodside is also there, and he tells us more about what's to be expected in a tight race for Museveni.
Well, there is a perception that the contest this time around will be more fierce, more competitive than on previous occasions. Museveni has, of course, now been in power for 30 years, and each mandate he gains, of course, the longer he's in power and perhaps the more stale things become. That's certainly the argument of the opposition, which says that instead of steady progress, which is the campaign promise of Museveni, it's actually slow progress. The last significant international poll before the elections put Museveni on just over 50%, and Kizza Besigye, the main challenger, on 28%. That indicates that it will be tight for Museveni in terms of winning in the first round. He would need to get over 50% of the vote in the first round to avoid a second round runoff. And we've not had a second round runoff before. If that happens, then it could, of course, unleash a very competitive race for that presidency.
Duncan Woodside there for us in Kampala. Well, Niger is also due for presidential elections. If all goes to plan, they're set for this Sunday. Current leader Mahamadou Issoufou says that he's sure of claiming a first-round victory, but other candidates point to the security and economic troubles faced by one of the world's poorest countries as evidence that Issoufou's term to date hasn't been quite the success he'd like to sell it as.
Ever since the start of the campaign, the incumbent Mahamadou Issoufou has been very confident. He says he's developed the nation's infrastructure these last 5 years. At every rally, he delivers the same message.
I agree with you. There will not be a second round.
Among his main rivals is Sini Oumarou, who came second in 2011. He represents the MNSD, which used to be Niger's only political party.
We want you all to go and vote on the 21st of February so that the incumbent can be kicked out of the competition after the first round.
Another favourite is Hama Amadou. His allies organise rallies, he's allowed to be a candidate, and yet he's behind bars, accused of being involved in baby trafficking. His supporters are furious.
We have thousands of examples where the government didn't respect the law and the constitution. But because they're in power, they think they can treat us any old way. They can't. We will not accept that.
In all, this Sunday, Niger's 7.5 million voters will have to choose their next president among 15 candidates.
The UN force in Mali paid tribute on Wednesday to the 7 Ghanaian peacekeepers killed in a jihadist attack on their base last week. The MINUSMA camp was targeted last Friday by Ansar Dine extremists who used armoured trucks, filled with explosives to slam in through the gates. One woman was amongst the victims commemorated at a ceremony on Wednesday. In Ghana, hundreds have been forced from their homes by tidal waves that hit coastal communities last week. The town of Fuvemi was one of the worst hit, and having lost almost everything, many accuse authorities of having done little to help them get by. Our correspondent sent us this report.
This amateur footage shows the moment a tidal wave crashed into a coastal community in southeast Ghana. This was one of the smaller ones in a series of waves that would devastate the town. This local government building got off relatively lightly. Bafiyara's home has been destroyed.
We have lost everything. Everything is destroyed. My children and I are stranded. We have been submerged. My family don't even know where to sleep. We don't know what to do.
Museveni is a small fishing community on Ghana's southern coast. Around 1,000 people live here. The majority of those are now homeless.
Here is the hall, the sitting room, and the kitchen beside it, and my bathroom.
John Doe, his wife and 3 children are now staying with friends. He blames rising sea levels for the destruction of his home.
Where the sea was before I started this project is far away from my building. But within just about 2 years, and to my realization, my house is now part of the sea.
Local government has promised to help. So far, no assistance has arrived, but it's not only short-term shelters that are urgently needed here.
We need the government to dredge the sand and build a sea defense. It would mean we could stay in our homes.
Government sea defence plans have been approved back in 2013, but they're still not funded. For now, these residents can only hope the sea doesn't strike again.
A Kenyan teacher is in the running for a $1 million prize in the search for the world's best teacher. Ayab Mohammed has made it to the final 10 of the Vaki Education Foundation's shortlist. Now, he caught the eye of judges with his work teaching kids about the dangers of buying into the violent ideology of extremists. He gives his classes in a part of Nairobi known to be targeted by al-Shabaab recruiters. Now, Mohammed says that he focuses on developing pupils' critical thinking skills and encouraging them to get involved with the community through recycling projects.
Actually, Kenya faces many challenges in terms of poverty, in terms of unemployment, in terms of pollution, in terms of radicalization and violent extremism. So these projects go a long way in trying to alleviate or try to, solve some of these problems. So as a teacher, that kind of a project in terms of the recycling of the wasted plastic bottles is, tries to solve the problem of pollution. So most of these plastic bottles and wasted polythene bags, they end up in the drainage system, they cause blockage, they end up being littered in the streets, and it causes a lot of pollution. So by trying to turn this trash into treasure, it's also a way of reducing pollution, it's a way of, reducing the unemployment rate.
Well, we wish Ayab the very best of luck, and the final winner of the competition will be announced on March 13th. Well, finally, we head to Addis Ababa, where former supermodel Anna Getane is trying to foster local talent. While she walked on the runways of Paris and New York in the 90s, she's now an entrepreneur with her own fashion studio, trying to inspire other African designers one show at a time.
Putting on the final touches before the show, former Ethiopian supermodel Anna Getane launched her own fashion brand to inspire local talents.
We support other designers, we mentor, we train, but at the same time, we're also building our own label, which also falls under the same category. It's important for me to source all my fabrics from Africa, to work with African talent, meaning designers, artisans, craftsmen.
On the catwalk, Getane's own label, Mosaic, is represented, as well as other African fashion designers. For many of them, this is a rare opportunity to showcase their work.
Africa has such a amazing talent. So I think being an African designer, I'm so proud, to show to the world that Africa can do more than what we expected. And we are here in Addis Ababa to show to the world that we can do.
This is one of several events bringing together models with an international career. Africa has produced several world-class models, and the continent is now pushing to make a name for itself in fashion design.
That's leaving me feel very dowdy. That is, though, where we're going to have to leave it for Eye on Africa. Thanks very much for joining us, and please do so again if you can. Take care.